Let's start off by crediting South Florida. They played with the appropriate level of force and
Something massive is brewing just beneath the surface of professional women's basketball, and the truth is finally spilling out into the open in a way nobody could have predicted or even imagined. For months, fans have watched with a mix of absolute awe and deep confusion as the most celebrated rookie in the history of the sport stepped onto the professional court, only to be met with a bizarre, highly coordinated wall of hostility. Everyone saw the cheap shots, the aggressive press conferences, and the unmistakable eye rolls from veterans who had been playing in empty gyms for over a decade. But what looked like simple competitive jealousy on television was actually masking a highly orchestrated, behind-the-scenes mutiny that almost brought the entire league to a grinding halt. Rumors of secret meetings, locker room ultimatums, and a deep-seated resentment against the new face of the franchise had been circulating in the dark corners of the sports world for quite some time, leaving fans wondering what was really happening when the cameras stopped rolling. It wasn't until legendary sports analyst Stephen A. Smith completely went off script and confirmed the unthinkable that the pieces finally started falling into place. According to whispers and recently surfaced audio leaks, a powerful coalition of veteran players were so enraged by the spotlight shifting away from them that they allegedly threatened to strike if the rookie continued to receive what they believed was preferential treatment. The sheer scale of this internal sabotage is mind-boggling, especially when you consider that this one player single-handedly pulled the organization out of financial ruin. But the rabbit hole of jealousy and power struggles goes far deeper than just a few angry veterans. And to truly understand how a professional league almost cannibalized its own savior, we have to go back to the moment the resentment first took root. Before the draft even happened, the writing was already on the wall for anyone paying close attention to the subtle jabs thrown by the old guard of the sport. Legends of the game were already appearing on national television to issue cryptic warnings, claiming that reality was coming for the new college sensation and implying that she wouldn't survive the brutal physicality of the professional rank. At the time, fans brushed these comments off as standard competitive trash talk, the kind of tough love you expect veterans to give incoming rookies. But insiders knew it was the beginning of a coordinated psychological campaign designed to protect the fragile egos of players who had been largely ignored by the mainstream media for their entire careers. The historical context here is incredibly important. For nearly 3 decades, women in this league had been fighting a losing battle against terrible television ratings, dismal merchandise sales, and a general lack of public interest. Many were forced to fly commercial, sleep in crowded airport terminals, and even travel overseas during the off-season to play in dangerous foreign leagues just to earn a living wage. They endured these grueling conditions for years, constantly begging league executives for better marketing and higher pay, only to be told that the money simply wasn't there. Then, out of nowhere, a 22-year-old girl from the Midwest shattered every collegiate viewership record imaginable and brought a tidal wave of unprecedented wealth and global attention straight to their doorstep. You would think the veterans would throw a parade for the person who finally answered their prayers. But human nature is rarely that logical. When the rookie finally signed her groundbreaking multi-million-dollar sneaker deal before even playing a single professional game, the tension inside locker rooms reportedly snapped. Players who had spent 15 years grinding for pennies were suddenly watching a rookie completely monopolize the global spotlight. And instead of riding the wave, they chose to build a massive dam of resentment. The league was suddenly flooded with unprecedented cash, leading to the immediate implementation of private charter flights, a luxury that veterans had literally been protesting to receive for more than a decade. Yet instead of thanking the catalyst behind this massive upgrade, a deeply bitter narrative began spreading rapidly behind closed doors. Whispers in the tunnels suggested that some veterans felt deeply disrespected, believing the league only cared about their safety and comfort once a specific demographic's favorite player arrived on the scene. This toxic mixture of financial envy and bruised egos created a powder keg of resentment that was simply waiting for a spark. The older players felt their years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice were being erased from history, replaced by the media's obsession with a player who hadn't even proven herself at the professional level yet. It was a classic case of misplaced anger. Instead of directing their frustration at the front office for ignoring them all those years, they aimed their venom straight at the rookie. And it didn't take long for that psychological warfare to manifest physically on the hardwood. As the season officially tipped off, it became chillingly obvious that an unspoken bounty had been quietly placed on the rookie's head. Fans tuning in to witness highly anticipated matchups were instead treated to a barrage of unprovoked physical hits that looked more like a wrestling match than a professional basketball game. Everyone remembers the infamous blindside hip check that sent her crashing violently to the floor while the ball wasn't even in play, a moment that shattered the illusion of a welcoming sisterhood within the league. What made these incidents so deeply shocking wasn't just the blatant aggression, but the terrifying complicity of officials and league executives who seemed completely unwilling to step in and stop it. It was almost as if a silent agreement had been reached across the entire association to allow the veterans to haze the newcomer without fear of suspensions, heavy fines, or serious penalties. Veteran players were even seen cheering from the bench when the rookie was knocked down, while post-game press conferences turned into passive-aggressive masterclasses where rivals refused to even say her name into the microphone. The undeniable reality was that the league's most profitable asset in its entire history was being actively hunted on the court, and the powers that be were perfectly content to let it happen just to appease the dangerous egos of the old guard. They wanted to humble her. They wanted to break her spirit. And most of all, they wanted to send a message to the world that this was still their league, regardless of whose name was printed on the back of the best-selling jerseys. But while the physical attacks were broadcast for the entire world to see in high definition, the true betrayal was quietly being orchestrated in high-rise boardrooms, where the most devastating blow to her career was being meticulously planned. The ultimate slap in the face came when the roster for the grandest international stage in sports was announced, and the most famous female athlete on the planet was mysteriously absent from the list. The Olympic snub sent massive shockwaves through the global sports community, sparking outrage and confusion among fans, celebrities, and even legendary athletes from other sports who couldn't comprehend the sheer stupidity of leaving guaranteed millions of dollars and unprecedented global viewership on the table. The official explanation handed down by the selection committee was deeply insulting. They claimed she lacked the necessary experience and insisted they didn't want to disrupt the established chemistry of the veteran squad. However, the truth that leaked from inside those tightly guarded committee meetings painted a far more sinister picture of leverage and internal pressure. According to highly placed sources within the organization, the veteran core of the national team allegedly drew a hard line in the sand, threatening serious disruption to team morale if the rookie was brought along to Paris and allowed to steal their international spotlight. They masked their jealousy behind the convenient excuse of protecting team chemistry, successfully strong-arming a weak committee into passing over the one player who would have sold out every arena in France. It was a staggering display of pure hubris, and a clear indicator that the old guard was willing to sabotage the growth of their own sport just to keep the newcomer in her place. They believed they could control the narrative, quietly icing her out of the history books while maintaining their grip on the sport's hierarchy. But they severely underestimated the backlash that decision would trigger. And they certainly didn't expect the loudest voice in sports media to suddenly rip the curtain back on the entire situation. Stephen A. Smith has never been one to hold back. But when the absurdity of the rookie's treatment reached its boiling point, he unleashed a tirade that shook the foundation of the league. Broadcasting to millions of viewers, he abandoned the polite diplomatic talking points that other networks seemed desperate to use to protect the league's image and went straight for the jugular. He exposed the jealousy dripping from veteran players, calling out their petty behavior on national television and demanding to know why they were actively trying to undermine the very person who was filling their pockets with unprecedented revenue. His rant wasn't just a passionate defense of the rookie. It was a calculated dismantling of the toxic, exclusive culture that had plagued the league for decades. Stephen A. pointed out the undeniable hypocrisy of players begging for higher pay, better travel conditions, and larger television deals for years, only to turn around and physically target the very person whose popularity finally made those demands possible. He highlighted the massive surge in ticket sales, the sold-out arenas in opposing cities, and the skyrocketing television ratings, proving mathematically that the rookie was largely responsible for the league's sudden explosion in attention. He even hinted at darker conversations happening behind the scenes, suggesting that the resistance to the rookie wasn't simply competitive fire but a deeply organized movement designed to pressure the league's front office into scaling back her marketing dominance. By dragging these uncomfortable truths into the blinding spotlight of national television, he forced the entire sports world to confront what had been quietly happening behind closed doors. The veterans could no longer hide behind the excuse of tough basketball. They were exposed as deeply insecure athletes who seemed willing to jeopardize their own financial future just to win a petty popularity contest. But what Stephen A. Smith would confirm next elevated the situation from a locker room feud into a full-blown existential crisis for the entire organization. The whispers of a coordinated retaliation finally materialized when the Players Association officially announced that it was opting out of the current collective bargaining agreement. On the surface, to casual observers, it looked like a standard business move, an attempt to secure higher salaries now that the league's revenue had exploded thanks to new television deals. But the timing of the announcement, combined with alleged leaked audio from private meetings, told a much darker story. Insiders and plugged-in sports analysts began connecting the dots, suggesting that the opt-out was being used as leverage in a shadowy internal battle over the rookie's overwhelming influence. The leaked sentiments, carefully guarded by media elites before eventually trickling into public discussion, suggested that a powerful faction of veteran players were furious that the league's promotional machine had effectively become a one-woman show. According to the explosive confirmations brought to light by Stephen A. Smith and other courageous reporters, there were genuine and deeply concerning threats of a complete work stoppage, a literal strike, if the league didn't immediately restructure its marketing priorities to protect the egos of certain veteran players. The veterans were essentially holding the upcoming seasons hostage, demanding that the massive wealth and blinding spotlight be redistributed artificially, regardless of what the paying fans actually wanted to see. The idea that professional athletes would risk shutting down their own league at the exact moment it reached peak popularity just to spite a 22-year-old is almost impossible to comprehend for anyone with basic business sense. Yet the deep-rooted bitterness had completely blinded them to the reality of the situation, leading to a desperate and reckless attempt to regain control of a narrative that had already left them far behind. They reportedly wanted the league to enforce strict limits on how much promotional time the rookie received, demanding that veteran players be featured equally in commercials, merchandise displays, and prime-time television slots. In doing so, they ignored the most basic laws of supply and demand, refusing to accept that fans were tuning in for one specific reason. This wasn't about securing a better future for the next generation of women's basketball. This was a targeted and vindictive campaign aimed directly at slowing the momentum of a player they believed was unworthy of the crown. As the terrifying threat of a league-wide strike loomed over the front office, the anti-rookie faction doubled down on its public relations war, using every podcast, interview, and social media platform available to aggressively reshape the narrative. Rival players began delivering increasingly loaded and controversial statements, attempting to reframe the rookie's overwhelming popularity as a product of unfair privilege rather than undeniable generational talent. An unusual, unspoken alliance seemed to form across rival teams, all focused on proving that the newcomer didn't deserve the unprecedented attention she was receiving. Some players even resorted to emotional outbursts on the court, arguing aggressively with referees over phantom fouls while simultaneously applauding teammates for delivering dangerously hard hits to the rookie's ribs and head. It turned into a disturbing spectacle of blatant bullying, disguised as so-called old-school toughness, while certain prominent media figures attempted to convince the public that this was simply normal basketball culture. They told fans they didn't understand the sport. They claimed the aggression was justified. They insisted the rookie needed to earn her stripes through physical punishment. But the fans weren't buying a single second of the carefully constructed narrative being fed to them by the establishment.